Welcome to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show here on STV2. The main talking points on tonight's programme. Hibs' new striker is keen to get started. Celtic failed to hit the target against Rosenborg. And Billy McKay happy to sign for County. Yeah, that's just a few of the things that we'll be discussing on the programme tonight. Alan Ruff is alongside me, Peter Martin. I'm delighted to say our bookroom guest tonight is the Sun reporter David Friel, and David has a book out and we'll talk about that a little later on in the programme. He was following Celtic over that momentous treble-winning year and undefeated in domestic football. So more of that a little later on, but let's cut to the chase on the back page headlines from this morning. Here's a look at some of the headlines in the sporting world. The Daily Record has Mousing in action. This is a reference, of course, to no Dembele until possibly the end of September with the hamstring problem. He was out last night. Celtic could only draw 0-0 with Rosenborg. And we'll beat the fans' fight is outgoing SPFL chairman Ralph Topping talking about any possible contesting of their statement yesterday on their handling of the Rangers tax case. Here's the Sun headlines. Belly flops, no Dembele, no Lee, no goals, and up the top there, again, no more tax-free titles is a reference to Neil Doncaster's quotes regarding that statement from the SPFL on Rangers and the EBTs. And there, on the edge, Rodgers praying Griffiths is going to be ready for the return leg against Rosenborg. He is struggling at the moment with a calf strain, and whether he makes it or not is open to debate. And on the back of most of the papers, it's all to do with last night. David Friel, you were at the game. That false number 9 didn't materialise, did he?
No, I mean, it was a hard shift for Tom Rogic, who played there for the majority of the game for Celtic. I think Brendan Rodgers had no option really. Mr Dembele out, Lee Griffiths out, Patrick Roberts gone. He was left with kind of little choice there. Tom Rogic played that role. It never really happened for him. He probably played better when he was moved a bit deeper and Johnny Hayes came on. But you know, it is on the edge, it is in the balance, and Celtic couldn't score the goal last night. Rosenborg probably should have scored the goal. So I think 0-0 probably in the balance of the game is a good result for Celtic, more so than Rosenborg. Yeah,
I mean, here's the team, Ruffy. I mean, I've put Rogic just slightly to the left because he kind of dropped into a very packed midfield. It became all so predictable where they would go left side, right side, and they weren't really able to break down the Norwegians.
No, they certainly weren't. That was a disappointing thing. I think they had a lot of the ball, which you would expect at home, but never did much with it. I think Brendan Rodgers is putting on a brave face, you know, saying he's quite confident in the next game. There's a lot at stake. There's £30 million at stake in this next game. There'll be a lot of pressure on it. But you could see last night that Celtic needed somebody up front, an outlet, you know, to hit the ball up, hold it up. Rogic is a player who likes the game in front of him, not behind him, you know, and I thought playing him in that position, you know, took him right out of the game, because I think if you think back to the European games last year, for 30-40 minutes, he was a big player in midfield. He was a driving force going through there. But all to do, as we were saying, a one each would be a good result, but it's going to be a nervous night for everybody.
Yep, and this is what Brendan Rodgers had to say on the striking conundrum.
I think it's just unfortunate that we have the two players out at the same time. Of course, in this moment, it will always look like it. I think the two we cope well with right the way through the season, and we've had other solutions to that last year. But we'll assess it if we don't think we're going to get the response from, say, Lee, and then we may have to look at, you know, if it's going to be for a sustained period of time, then of course you need a reference in your team, and it's something that we'll monitor and assess.
So the striking area is a problem if they get Griffiths back, which I think they'll need to. The other part of it is, I wonder what they'll do in the centre of defence. I mean, Christopher Ayer, I thought actually coped well, but you're asking a lot of a 19-year-old to go into a second European game away from home.
Yeah, I mean injury-wise, I mean Celtic have been, you know, if you lose your two main strikers and then lose two of your three centre-halves, obviously Kolo Touré's gone as well, but Sviatchenko's injured, Boyata's injured. you know, it left, Izagiri's gone now, Christian Gamboa's injured, it left a game with very, very little options, and Christopher Ajer for 19 and did equip himself very well, but do you want to be going into a game in Norway with your Champions League £30 million on the line with a teenager there? I wouldn't think so, but I don't know if Brendan Rodgers will have any option, because Sviatchenko again is struggling just like Griffiths is.
I think the other thing about it, Ruffy, certainly on the evidence of last year when we were out at the Champions League group game, Celtic under Brendan Rodgers more than capable of going there and getting the result. My only, concern with this whole pattern with Celtic is they do tend to play this gamble with Champions League all the way to the end of, all the way to the end of the transfer window. They do it every year. I mean, you could honestly, write it down every year. The way they wait before they make any commitment to signings. It's not as if they're short of money. No. They've got barrel loads of it in there.
Yeah, I find that absolutely astounding. Yeah, and I know there's nothing you can do about injuries, but Dembele and Griffiths have had injuries since January. Both of them have been in and out. So although you're banking on these two to see you out the season, you would have thought you would have said, right, we've got Champions League coming up. Why don't we go and get another striker? I mean, there wasn't even a striker on the bench last night. In such a high-profile game, you would have thought somebody would have identified somebody, to just back these two up, because we all know that, we think Dembele's going to be moving on, so you would have thought you'd have already brought a striker in to sort of back that up. But I would still say Celtic need 3 strikers. You can't get through a season with 2 strikers.
And yet you're in the manager's company and he said 2's enough.
Well, Tuesday, at the written press conference, we asked Brendan, do you not need another striker? And he said probably not. He said he was quite happy to go with the 2. Have young Jack Aitchison as backup and use Johnny Hayes, Tom Rogic, Scott Sinclair off them. I mean, he did say, I think the phrase he used was, I've got 2 highly strung strikers who want to play. Sometimes if you add a third to that, then it upsets the mix. But I think now, as Brendan alluded to there, I think he's going to have to go and sign a striker, because Dembele's going to be out for 6 weeks. Griffiths has had recurrent problems with his calf, may not even be fit for Tron time. So I don't really see any other option but to go and get a striker, whether it's a loan player, whether it's somebody who's a free agent. As Ruffy says, to not even have a striker on the bench for the biggest game of the season was, far from ideal. Yeah,
and listening and reading between the lines on the comments from Sviatchenko's agent, I don't think it'll be too long before he's on his way as well. Christopher Ajer, can he come in there and do a job? Here's what the Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers had to say about the young central defender.
It's difficult, a young player coming in, 19 years of age, into a big game like this here. He acquitted himself well. He's only going to get better, Christopher, as he plays and gets more experience. But he's got the tools there, and I believe going forward he can be a very good young player, but just needs experience playing and feeling the pressure of the big games.
Okay, big question. Can you see them do it away from home to get through?
I can see them being good enough to go there and get a draw. And obviously Lee Griffiths will be a big player in that. We saw last night there wasn't anybody, prepared to take the Lee Griffiths role on. So I think he's going to be a big player again.
Okay, as far as Rosenborg are concerned, their manager thinks the balance of power has shifted.
Now it's a cup final. It's all about winning it. So that's the main thing. We can go back home and everything to play for. So and then we will hopefully fill up our stadium. And I think at home we are even better than we were today.
Are you more
as favourites and not favourites? I think that's 50-50. I think. So we can leave them as favourites.
Yeah, Kari Ingebrigtsen, quite confident, I thought, throughout the after-match press conference.
Yeah, he was very prompt in, Peter, and he was very confident. And Rosenborg do have a good home record. I think the phrase he used straight away was a cup final next week, and I agree with that. I just can't see Celtic not scoring again. They've never gone 2 games under Brendan Rodgers without scoring. 2 successive games, so I can see Celtic scoring. I think it's a case of what they can do at the other end. I think Simjonovic and Ajer are going to have to, if it is those two, really stand up to some pressure. But I can't see Celtic scoring. A scoring draw will be good enough for Celtic to go through, but I think it'll be a tense night.
Yeah, okay. Just before we go to the break, the timing of the show means Aberdeen will hopefully be kicking off in their match against Apollon Limassol. Let's hope they get a great result up at Pittodrie, and also to Scotland's women against Spain in the European Championships. We need a win, a couple of goals, and hope England can do us a right turn against Portugal. Who'd have thought we'd be saying that? After the break, we'll talk Rangers and Hibs. Here's a wee question to test your football knowledge. Welcome back to Peter Nuffy's Football Show on STV2. The Sun reporter David Friel is our bootroom guest. We've been looking back over Celtic's 0-0 with Rosenborg. Hopefully we're talking tomorrow night on the programme about Aberdeen winning in the first leg of their Europa League match, and who knows, we might even be celebrating Scotland's women as well, still being involved in the tournament. All will be revealed, no doubt, over the next 24 hours. There's lots of clubs we'll be keeping an eye on to see what they're doing. Rangers, as you would expect, Ruffy, have been pretty quiet since the Europa League exit. They've just tried to get on with things, trying to lift the players and bed in some of the players that Pedro Caixinha has bought. They got a 2-1 win over Watford, and I think the manager was very, very happy with what he described as a fantastic performance. I think now we're going to see in the next couple of months, the players that he wanted in the club, how they perform.
Yeah, I think it's all about, as you said, they're bedding in. A lot of players who don't know each other, they don't know the style of play. So the more games they play with each other, they'll get used to that. It looks as if he's going to go for a 4-4-2 formation. That means Wycorn might get a shout. Obviously, he scored late on last night. So a lot of them have got a lot to prove. But it's game on, game on. If he keeps picking it, I always say when you play close season games, it's okay if you get beat, say, no, the performance was good. But you want to go into your first really competitive game on a winning run, and that's what he'll be trying to do. He'll be trying to beat Sheffield at the weekend and get a settled side, a side that he knows will compete, because it's going to be a hard shift for them in the first game.
Yeah, I think to be fair to him, I don't think at the tail end of the season you're really getting a real insight into how Rangers are going to play, because he's inherited a squad that he said was the best in Scottish football, but suddenly he's actually started to shunt most of them out of the door, David.
Yeah, I think for Pedro, when he came in, it was very much try to settle Rangers down, but also trying to experiment to see who he wanted to keep, who had a long-term future. He was trying guys like David Bates and, giving the players a chance. I think he very quickly realised who he did want to keep. He gave Kenny Miller an extension and then went about a spending spree, a signing spree. I think Rangers have signed 9 or 10 players now. And I think over time, you'll see what Pedro Caixinha is trying to do in terms of, obviously, in a 4-4-2, Bruno Alves, Graham Dorn's good players. You've got a couple of Mexicans, Herrera and Peña, who have got caps for a country, who have got a decent pedigree. And I think over time, Rangers would settle and become much better. The problem for Pedro Caixinha is time, because the Progress Intercom result has obviously put him on the back foot again, and Rangers now have to really start the season strong. I think a couple of good results, and I think he would get a lot of backing, and the pressure would be off slightly. But right now he's under pressure, as you're saying, to go and start the season very well. I always think,
Ruffy, when you get to a situation where winning games, there's some games you're always expected to win, but then there's a selection of Rangers fans who then start to really dissect the way they're playing. Before you get to September and you get your first Glasgow derby, then you go on to a period where you're under the microscope. And I think that you get 2 or 3 games under your belt, the wins, and then everybody looks towards Celtic Rangers.
Mm-hmm. No, I think the Rangers supporters will be encouraged by the players that he's brought in. Again, they'll look for a good start, a quick start. They'll want to be seen to be as near Celtic in the league as possible. That was the big one last year, second or third or second. I think the Rangers supporters will demand that it is second this time. So he really needs to get off to a good start and get everybody behind him. Do
you think second? I think Rangers fans will be looking and thinking, there is a huge gap there. I mean, the expectations of the club will surely be that they want to really have a go. I think personally, get past Aberdeen is the goal for Rangers, but there are some who would clearly be thinking title.
I don't think Rangers fans will ever get into a season saying second will be good enough. I just don't think that will be in their mindset at all. And I think if Pedro Caixinha's got that mindset, then he's in the wrong place. Rangers always have to be going to challenging for the title. It's going to be obviously difficult because you would imagine Celtic, given what they did last season, will win the league. But I think Rangers will be starting the season looking to challenge. Whether they can do that, whether they can, as you're saying, beat Aberdeen in the league. Aberdeen have strengthened really well. Remains to be seen. But I do think once Bruno Alves and Dorns settle and really make their mark in the Rangers team, I do think you'll see an improvement.
Yep, okay. There's another club in there who believe they're going to be in the mix for second, third or fourth, and they're wearing green and white at Easter Road. It's Hibernian. They started to make signings. They're starting to make signings that are very difficult for commentators, Ruffy, I have to tell you. I mean, even Neil Lennon's calling their latest signing Big Davy, which gives you an indication of how difficult it is to pronounce. Davidas Matalavicius, who is another striker, a Lithuanian, tall, I would imagine, got a physical presence about him. This is what he had to say today about obviously coming to Scottish football.
I think for me was like all the time for me was dream to come in somewhere in Great Britain, in like England, Scotland. So when Hibs proposed me contract, I say, almost I can go there. So for me, like, I decided in 1 minute to come here. So like all British football, like a lot of fights, so it's British football for me is more, I think, because I'm physical, football. So for me, I think it's good for me.
Yeah, he's my type of footballer, Ruffy. He likes a lot of fights in the game. That's my type of striker.
We keep my and him for the first Hibs Hearts derby game.
You can, I mean, honestly, sometimes you can actually see, patterns in managers, can't you?
Yeah, and I think given that Grant Holt's the party, I think Neil Lennon wanted someone to be, I don't think you're saying a fighter up front, but he wanted a focal point. He wanted somebody to go and take the knocks, and by all accounts, Matalavicius, if that's how you pronounce his name, has got a really good pedigree. He's got about 30 caps for Lithuania. He's played in Belgian football, and I think he'll be the guy that will go up there, take the knocks, be a focal point, let Hibs go and play off someone over the course of the season. I think he'll be a big player for him.
Yeah, I mean, if you could land Stokes off the back of that as well, suddenly you're saying to yourself, he's filling it. I fully expect if Chris Commons' back injury is 100% recovered, I think he'll go and join them as well. So, I'm looking at the calibre of player that he's been bringing in. Apart from that physical presence of the latest striker, he's managed to add something, a bit of solidity at the back as well, and in the midfield area. I'm looking at Hibs and thinking this is not a bad recruitment plan. Yeah. If he can land Stokes and maybe even Commons.
Yeah, I think if Hibs don't finish top 4, top 5, I'd be really surprised. I think he's just talking about at the back. Efe Ambrose is a good signing for them. Stephen Whittaker's a great signing for Hibs. Very good player. He's also got options in attack now. Simon Murray gives you something different, a bit of energy, a bit of pace. Matalavicius will give you a bit more physical presence. As you're saying, if you can bring in Stokes, who's got that little bit of magic about him, Commons will get you goals, then I think there's real options there for Hibs to go and play different ways. And if you look at Neil Lennon's career, that's what he likes to do as a manager. Yeah,
and the flip side of that, Ruffy, looking at his signings, looking at his pedigree, as David's just alluded to, suddenly it cranks up the pressure when you're in the city of Edinburgh, because having lived there, you're either a Jambo or a Hibby, and beating your great rivals is the be-all and end-all at times.
Yeah, as David said, there will be an expectation for the Hibs fans. I mean, let's not forget that stadium was full most of last year. So they'll go into the new season, they'll look at the signings. I have to say, Neil's signings, there's bags of experience there. He's went for a lot of guys who have been it and done it. So I think the Hibs supporters will be looking forward to the season.
Yep, and on the flip side of that, with Hearts and their recruitment, I think they need more again before he eventually gets to that settled team that he's looking for, because this, of course, is going to be Ian Cathrow's big judgment. Like Pedro Caixinha, that first 2 to 3 months is crucial, Ruffy.
Yeah, I said that as well. I said the unfortunate for him is I think it's the first 5 games are away from home. That's a big pressure on a club. You know, if you're not picking up points, it's okay saying you'll get these home games later on, but if you don't cash in these first 5 games, you could be adrift, you could be sitting bottom 6, you could have people on your back, you know, so it's going to be a tough start for them.
Yeah, is it too much pressure to suggest that your old boys at Partick Thistle, I think that club's structure, everything in there is looking right, they could be in the mix as well?
They'll expect to, you know, the end of the season there, they were playing well, moving up in the league, and I think Alan was impressed with everybody. Okay, he's lost a couple of players, but he's also brought a couple in, and I think they're still going to add maybe a couple of players before the season starts.
Yeah, Adam Barton seems to think Thistle will be top 6 again.
Yeah, and again, that's the confident mindset and approach you need to take. I think Alan Archibald, for me, one of the best young managers in Scottish football. I think he does a really good job. He signs well. I think Niall Keown's a really good signing to get a permanent deal. Blair Spittle will get you goals. I think if Thistle can maybe just add one more striker, you know, I know they're looking at a few. I think they were also taking a look at Michael Hallen a couple of weeks ago as well. Somebody like that, somebody with a bit more pace up front, I think would really take them on. But if you look at Thistle, St Johnstone, Hibs, even Ross County and Kelly, they'll all be trying to get into that top 6 as well. And I think the league will be a lot stronger this year than it was last year.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned Ross County there. We'll hear from the latest signing, Billy Mackay, coming up after the break. Ruffy and myself try as much as we possibly can to avoid having anyone on the programme who enhances their looks by cosmetic surgery. So we're going to discuss that point coming up after the break to see which one of the three of us has indeed gone for an operation just to try and look that little bit better for television. It's a big question. The answer's coming up. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's football show here on STV2. The Sun reporter David Friel is our bookroom guest. Ruffy, I was worried, you obviously had been in the supermarket ahead of time. You had spoken to a few people who knew the guests that we had coming on this week, and some people just want to look their absolute best, so they go and get surgery.
Yeah, it's obviously.
When are we ever going to say that in the programme again?
It's obviously a worry when you're not looking good, you know, and to go to that length is just, it just shows you how much desperate they are to go in the show.
Absolutely. And you know, when your mum presses record and then she's looking at that head, I mean, what happened? I mean, it's just...
Yeah, it was just took on a centre forward and come off second best, I'm afraid. So a couple of stitches, but they're out now, Peter, so I'm on the road to recovery.
We were actually rubbing our hands thinking, yeah, dancer, this is going to be magnificent material. Although you mentioned the fact that you've gone up for a header with a centre half, with a striker or whatever, and injured yourself. I think Dunfermline have a similar problem, but no other player was involved, only one in this training ground situation. Obviously Dunfermline just starting to move the ball about and get their fitness up and try and get those finishes in, and just a good ball back in there. Oh yeah, oh, Ruffy. What's up?
What did he run into there?
He ran it. Well, the camera, obviously.
Oh, was it the camera? Was that or just a stand? Oh, well, we've seen that before.
Have you ever had mishaps in the old training field, Ruffy?
No, most of the time when I went into the net was there to stop me, so I wasn't going to run into anything. But no, I don't think so, not that I can think of off the top of my head.
That was absolutely fabulous. I think that was Callum Higginbottom, I might be wrong, but nevertheless, great piece of footage there from Dunfermline. Elsewhere, we heard from Jim McIntyre early on in the week, and of course he confirmed that Billy Mackay was going to sign from Wigan on a permanent deal to try and replace Liam Boyce. Of course, Mackay was a former Inverness Cali Thistle striker, but I don't think he's too worried about making the switch to the great rivals Ross County.
Once I spoke to the manager, you know, knew how much he wanted me, and you know, coming up here and speaking to him, you know, it was easy after that. I feel like this is the best place for me to come and get back to my best. Well, first and foremost, I've got to get myself fit. You know, I've recently had a groin operation, so for me, it's about getting myself fit and then take it from there. And you know, I've got to get myself in the team. There's 3 other strikers, so if I do that, I've got to get back scoring goals.
Well, he's got a pedigree for scoring goals, Ruffy. I think he's just lost his way a wee bit.
Yeah, I think he's the kind of player that defenders don't like to pick up. He runs a line. if he can find a midfield player that can play the passes to him. I always think he's half a yard ahead of everybody, and if you give him that half a yard, he's got an eye for goal. And as you saw in that year, he scored a barrel load of goals. But I think it all depends on the players that he's playing with, but I certainly he's an asset to them.
Yeah, Jim McIntyre's got a good eye for a player. I mean, he's not one of those guys that'll keep players hanging around. I mean, he's told Jay McEvely that he can go. He still had, I think, a year of his deal to run. If somebody's going to be just, you know, sitting on the bench, it's no use to him. He needs players who can actually, in a very tight squad, do a job for him.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Ross County, I really like them as a club. I've got a lot of time for them. I think they do things the right way. It's always great to go up there. You always get a really nice warm welcome, and I think they've done brilliant. You know, to really establish himself in the league, to go and win a cup under Jim like they did. You know, I just think they've been a real credit to that part of the world, and I think they'll have another good season again. I think Billy Mackay's a really good signing for them. I was reading this morning that he's had groin problems for the last 18 months. He now feels as if he's got it fixed. He says he's not been playing anywhere near 100%. So if he can get going, get fully fit, I think he'll score a lot of goals.
Yeah, I know it's early days, and it's quite a... It's not a good question to ask when you still get a lot of signings that can come in. Are there any clubs that are screaming out at you, David, that you think are worryingly going to be involved in, you know, playoffs and the like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the club that was involved in a playoff last year, Hamilton Accies, you know, I do think Hamilton will... I think they need to sign players. You know, I think of all the clubs in the league, I think Hamilton have probably done the least business, really. They've signed a couple of players, but I think Hamilton would probably need a hand somewhere. And again, I think it might come down to who scores. You know, do Motherwell keep Louis Moult? Do Kilmarnock keep Chris Boyd fit? All those kind of things, you know. I don't imagine there'll be any real surprises down the bottom of the league, but I would think Hamilton, Martin Cannon towards the end of the window, whether it's loans or not, we'll be looking to strengthen somewhere.
Yeah, I think the key to it, we emphasise this every night on the programme, Ruffy, when you're talking about teams that have to either look towards mid-table or look to avoid the bottom end of this league and the way it's set up, is goal scorers. I mean, even today, there's Leeds United have released Lee Irwin. Now, he looked useful when he was at Motherwell. He's got offers in England, he's got offers in Scotland. That's the type of player in maybe a wage bracket that's affordable.
Yeah, you're right. Strikers... Every striker, you know, a good one can come up with the goods. And we saw it last year. There were so many games in the bottom six when the teams were coming up against each other and it was hanging in the balance at 1-0, you know, and couldn't get that second goal. But if you're in the team that's got that striker who can come up with a second goal, it's amazing how many points difference it'll be at the end of the season.
Yeah, I still think, you know, Motherwell fans will be sitting, biting their nails, thinking the Moult situation is one where I think maybe they're thinking they'll be resigned to losing him the closer you get to the window, and then it makes it difficult for guys like Stevie Robinson, who has to think, who do I get to replace him?
Well, Stevie Robinson will be realistic. I know they're trying to get Louis Moult in a new deal, but if a good offer comes in, obviously Aberdeen are very, very keen, then it's hard to stand in his way and it's hard to resist that money. But I think Motherwell would have to make sure they've got someone lined up to come in straight away, because as you're saying, you don't want to be going 2-3 days before the end of the window try to scramble about to get a striker, because they're so precious, and as Ruffy's saying, if you can get someone that even scores 15 goals a season, what a difference it makes, what a difference it can turn draws into wins, it can turn defeats into draws. And for me, if Motherwell can keep Louis Moult, they'll have no issues at all this season. Likewise, if Hamilton can get a striker, that could even just push them up a couple of places.
Yeah, listen, there's no point. I wonder why I'm even asking you this question, Ruffy, because every year since we started this programme, you've tipped Hamilton to go down.
Yeah, and that's why, just what David's saying, they don't have the same budget, they don't have the same resources. You know, they have a philosophy of bringing the young boys in. I mean, that's not going to work all the time, but if you get a kick out of seeing young guys coming in and selling them on, keeping the club stable, then that's the way to go. But it's a very nervous year in, year out, if you're going to be in that bottom three, you know, for the supporters as well, because it means you've got to keep the supporters on board. No supporters want to be with a team who's down second bottom every year. So the higher up the league you can get, the better. But it's unfortunate for Hamilton. When you look at what all the other clubs are doing, and as David said, they just don't seem to have that philosophy of throwing the cash out there.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk in the next part of the programme to David about a book that he's released. It's out on sale. We'll talk about that and the inspiration for the book and some of the stories within the book very shortly. Just on the fact that you work for the Sun newspaper, I mean, you're obviously looking, you guys chasing stories right, left and centre up here. Down south, your compatriots must be having a field day. I mean, I was reading Ross Barkley, wants to leave Everton. If a player wants to go, he usually goes. I mean, what type of money would you think for a player of Ross Barkley's standing in the game? And I think he's a guy who really is unfulfilled.
Well, for me, if Gylfi Sigurdsson's a good player. Gylfi Sigurdsson's better than Ross Barkley, and he's going for 45 million by all accounts. I don't know. As you're saying, how good is he? I'm not sure Ross Barkley is anywhere near top class standard in English, but he'll probably still fetch 35 million, which down south the money is just it's beyond ridiculous now.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember actually going down to Everton when David Moyes was the manager, Ruffy, and he said to me, I've got a 15-year-old kid who's going to turn 16. I can't stop him. I'm actually going to play him when he's 16 in the side. He's that good. And I thought, well, I've got to see him, and it was Wayne Rooney in the training. He just stood out. You thought he'd been a 10-year veteran. But this guy, I don't think he's anywhere near it. Yet he could go for 10, 20, 30 million, 40 million.
No, and I think even when he broke into the Everton side, I think when he was young enough, when he went in there, he looked absolutely superb. He looked as if he was a next England player, and everybody was tipping him for the heady heights. But like a lot of players, sometimes you don't fulfil your potential. But I still think he's a good player.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, Antonio Conte reckons that the best player that he would love to sign for Chelsea is Harry Kane. He reckons he's worth £100 million. He reckons he has everything.
Well, we spoke about goals in Scotland. Harry Kane guarantees you goals in England. What was it, 35 he got last season?
Yeah.
And again, goal scorers, name your price. Basically, look at Morata, look at the money Chelsea spent on him. Harry Kane could go probably to any top club in England and they would all pay £100 million for him.
I still say, Ruffy, Harry Kane should be recovering from the injury that Craig Gordon should have inflicted on him when the ball was coming over. Yeah. Take the ball, take Harry Kane, and if we get you sent off, Craig Gordon, then tough. We've won the game.
Yeah, I think we were enough to have a go at him as well, where we were trackside, so maybe we should have done something as well. Because we saw it coming.
Oh, I can see it coming. It's the first time I've seen Chris Commons and Kenny Miller trying to attack the same ball. It was fantastic, but it didn't quite work out for his Harry Kane scoring for England. Still the most painful part of the summer. Seems like only yesterday. OK, we're going to talk a book that's coming out. I'll reveal that book to you. David Friel is the main author of it. We'll have a chat about that. And we'll also give you the answer to the Ryan Giggs question. How many major honours has he won at Manchester United? If you managed to get that right, Ruffy, no problem to you. I've got to give you credit. You were on it right away. I mean, David and I were in complete shock the fact that you managed to get that.
Yeah, I have to hold my hands up and say it was an absolute guess. It was the old school one. You know, how many years has he been there? Double it, take away the first number you thought of, and then add 4.
The reason why I was amazed because you very rarely get a question right, but also we have actually had on the programme some people who cheat. And have their phone and then they start to Google the answer. I'm not going to reveal names, but that has happened on the programme.
Yes, unfortunately, it's only on a Monday.
That's true. So Ryan Giggs, I was just wondering, on Ryan Giggs, where would you place him in the all-time top Manchester United players?
I would say right at the top. If not the best, I don't think he's far away.
Yeah.
I think for a guy to have that length of time at one club, to win everything at one club and, transform himself from a flying winger at 16, 17 into a sort of holding midfielder towards the end, and I think I credit his profession. Thought he was absolutely outstanding for Man United.
Yeah, high praise indeed. You caught me on the hop there, David. I'm going to say now into his credit, it could be a generational thing. Ruffy, are you buying into that? Now, the only reason I'm saying that, I'm not discounting it because a number of people share David's view on it, but I look at it and I'm thinking best European footballer of the year, Dennis Law, Charlton, Paul Scholes, Some would say Duncan Edwards, Eric Cantona, Roy Keane, Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo and Brian Robson, to name but a few.
No, I would agree with David. I think the names that you've mentioned there, he would be up there. You know, I think if you see, you see the greatest moments, and if you look at Ryan Giggs's greatest time, some of the goals he scored, he was an out-and-out winger. You know, somebody who goes by people now.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean putting the ball by them and then beating them for pace. I mean somebody who can take on people and go by 2 or 3. It's like George Best. And I thought he was an entertainer, and yeah, certainly one that kind of player I would like on my side.
Yeah, I don't know if we've forgotten any great Manchester United players. I'm sure you can add to it at Peter and Ruffy on Twitter and Facebook.com/Peter and Ruffy. I mentioned that David is thankfully coming on the programme to talk football, but he also has a book out. I feel a little bit like Terry Wogan and Michael Parkinson. You've got a book? That's a surprise. But nevertheless, you brought out a book that I actually thought, 1,000,001 people would have jumped on the bandwagon. You're the only man to really take the initiative on it. It's Brendan Rodgers' historic first season at Celtic, Invincible, which kind of sums up the Celtic season under Brendan Rodgers. I think you deserve great credit for this. You're the only man I know who's managed to write a book. You've got the Gallaghers in it. I mean, you could win the name dropping of all time. You've got the Gallaghers. He's got the lead singer of Supertramp in the book, Ruffy. This is the type of thing he's mentioned in it. Joey Barton features in there. Scott Brown, the lot. Listen, we don't need to know what the motivation was for it, because it was an historic season for Celtic. It's the man more than anything else. I think the coup of Celtic getting. Am I right in thinking that all started with the day Rangers won in penalties at Hampden in the semi-final?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that in hindsight was one of the best things that could have happened for Celtic in the last couple of years, losing that game to Rangers, because I think at that stage Celtic realised they had to do something pretty big, pretty special to go and really make a statement. I think Ronnie was, had success domestically, but his reign was clearly over at that point. He was never going to keep going. I think the Celtic board that day realised that they were going to have to do something to get the connection back with the fans, to take the club forward, and they started the hunt for a new manager. It pretty quickly became clear for me and for us, and working on the story at the time, that they would like either Brendan Rodgers or David Moyes. It turned out they got Brendan Rodgers. They paid a lot of money for Brendan Rodgers, gave him the going rate in terms of his salary. And I think last year, in terms of the historic season, I think they get more than a reward for that.
Yeah, I get a sense in here that you felt that the key issue for him was to get inside the captain's head.
Mm-hmm. That was, one of the first. In terms of the book, I tried not just to write a game-by-game, month-by-month, review of the season. It's not about that. It's more about the themes of the season. Brendan Rodgers' methods, his ideas, his training, his tactics, how he does stuff, and also his relationships with the key players. Scott Brown's one of them. One of the first things he did was phone Scott Brown, say, "I want to meet you." Scott Brown was in London at the time, so they met up in London at Brendan's house. I think they were there for 4 hours, chatting over things, and as you're saying, getting inside Scott's head, making it clear that he felt like he'd gone for a lot longer than Scott probably thought at the time. I think Scott thought maybe 2 more years. Brendan Rodgers said, no, 3 or 4, no problem at all.
Yeah.
And also that how much he wanted Scott to really foster a spirit within the squad and get, as a good manager would, get his key player, his big personality with him straight away. And from that moment, they formed a close bond, and I think that probably helped get all the players on board with what Brendan was wanting to do.
And I think the key to the success is not only Scott Brown's head, but he worked on players that he thought fitted into his ethos. I mean, I think Chris Commons was the guy who maybe didn't quite match up to that. No disrespect to him, he has a certain type of player who plays a certain type of way. Somebody who responded, who looked as if he might have been heading out the door, was Craig Gordon. Yeah,
I mean, in the Craig Gordon story, again, there's a chapter devoted to Craig in terms of, he saves a penalty, Celtic go through against Hapoel Beersheva, then he loses his place, but then 5 games later, he obviously loses his place to Dawes de Vries. 5 games later, he's back in the team. By January, Chelsea are trying to sign him for £3 million. And again, I try to kind of look into the story of Craig's season and how that fits against the backdrop of Celtic's season. But for me, that was one of the kind of most interesting parts of last season, was the guys who'd been written off. Guys like Callum McGregor, for example, guys like Stuart Armstrong, Boyata, guys who most Celtic fans probably thought, if they want to go, they can go. There would be no great loss. Brendan Rodgers signed guys like Dembele and Scott Sinclair, and they were huge signings, but it's what he did to develop and coach the other players and get the best out of them. and make history, basically. You know, if they said at the start of the season that that group of players, with the addition of maybe 2 or 3, would go the whole domestic season undefeated and qualify for the Champions League, nobody would have believed you.
Yeah, I mean, to your great credit, you, you know, pay credit to the sources that suddenly bring the book together. You probably worked hours and hours getting it all together. The one thing that I think people might not grasp is the fact that the Brendan Rodgers, the persona that comes out towards the press and the Celtic fans and everything, the man in the background is like a rod of iron. It's his way or the highway.
Yeah, of course, in terms of, you know, he speaks very well and everybody, he talks a lot of sense, but there's a steely side. You know, you don't get the success in football and manager clubs like Liverpool and Celtic if you don't have a steely side. And, you know, the Celtic players are, from day one, when, you know, I think the first day of pre-season, he basically had a meeting with them and said, this is my rules, this is what I want to do, this is how you will work. If you don't do it, you know, you're out, basically. And without being I'm not talking Sir Alex Ferguson style draconian rules or anything like that, but he basically set the groundwork, set down the rules that he wanted to operate within, the parameters he wanted to operate within, and then from there everybody was on the same page and moved forward. And I think in terms of fitness, in terms of how tactically Celtic improved, you know, I think that's a credit to how good a coach he is.
Yeah, I mean, when I interviewed him at the PFA Award when he was picking up Manager of the Year, I mean, I had a real go at him, Ruffy, and this 8% body fat and you can't play for him. I mean, he needs to have a long, hard look at himself. What about guys with a touch?
Yeah, but I think David's right, you know, that any interview we've seen him, he's talking sense all the time, you know, and you want to listen. And I'm sure if he's like that with us listening to him, I'm sure the players will be intrigued in the dressing room, everything he says. And he has a philosophy that you can't argue that it worked. I think we all hope that it works next week.
Yeah.
And that'll be the big telling bit of it all, you know, that the success, when you're at a club with that amount of success, you want to keep going.
Yeah, I don't know how you're thinking about we all. There are some people that don't hope that they win next. So calm your jets. Listen, before I get
from a neutral point of view.
All right, okay. It's a good read. I must admit, you know, neutrals, Celtic fans, obviously will love it. I think they'll love the part of the Manchester City, which for me I think was a really defining moment for Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it's obviously Invincible. It's about, that's a nod to the domestic season, but the Champions League was so important. Qualifying for it, the Barcelona defeat was another important point in terms of how Brendan wanted Celtic to play. But then I felt the Man City night was a game when a team almost came of age and decided or realised that they were good enough to go and compete at that level. And you know, that's a big part of the book as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we wish you every success. We're delighted that you came on the show to talk about it as well. And of course, the one person who's really delighted that the book is now completed is David's wife. You know, because finally, you know, they can start to watch some programmes and, you know, basically just start to reacquaint themselves with each other. It's very difficult writing a book just in your own, Ruffy, on the old typewriter and not listening to anybody. So we wish him every success with that. It's great to have David Friel as our bookroom guest. Join us tomorrow. Another journalist, Hugh MacDonald, will be back with us on the programme. Join us if you can from 7:30. Good night.